Continuing on this product journey, let's get into styling aspects. So stylers, you could be using leave-in serums, gels, creams, balms, mousse. There's so many, hairspray. Oh my goodness, there's a ton. And I'm sure I'm not going to top them all, but I'm gonna hit the major ones. So although shampoo and conditioner are incredibly important, those are your foundation products. They're always what I focus on primarily. Your stylers are where you really need to pay attention to your environment and the climate, like I was saying earlier, because that's what's going to help you either enhance or protect whatever you're in. So with a serum or a cream, let's call them just a basic leave-in. Those are usually the two types. We can have really, really heavy ones or really, really lightweight ones, and they're not specific to either category. So there are plenty of serums that are lightweight or almost dry oils, which evaporate almost the second they get into the hair. And then there's some that are incredibly heavy and just glossy. Then with creams, the same thing. They range from the milky products that are a little bit on the runny or translucent side, all the way into dense, opaque ones that are more like lotions or leave-in masks for your hair. When making a decision on which one to use, I would say listen to your hair. So if your hair tends to be a little bit kind of on the drier or rough side, a lot of times the serum is nice because they can be kind of layered and reapplied, and they can be applied at different points and different intervals of your styling, and it helps kind of give you that cosmetic feeling. Now, if you've tried serums and they're not your jam, then a cream is a good one. I always recommend a heat protectant in your leave-in, even if you're not heat styling your hair. And the reason why is because if you live somewhere even that's cold or someplace that's hot, the product will still start working and being protective if it's warmed by, let's say, something, the sun or a furnace. So I always like the heat protectants because you can get an added little sneaky benefit from them just from being in warm spaces. So that's something to think about. Again, the range on them are completely all over the place. And here's one though, a lot of times people who live in a humid climate will actually decide to not use a leave-in. That's totally fine. And no product is always fine as well, always. But let's say you're one of those people, you're like, if I use the leave-in, either I get too oily or I frizz all the way out. That completely makes sense. It's so much moisture that if you have external moisture, it'll just kind of go gross and stringy. Or if you have moisture on top of moisture, it'll poof. So if you're in a humid climate, I can understand you may just want to skip the leave-ins altogether. If you are someplace that is dry, I would not ever recommend skipping the leave-in. I think you're gonna need it no matter what. It's just going to give an extra layer of protection. So kind of your leave-ins and serums. Also with serums, if you ever want to kind of gauge how it's going to feel on your hair, take it and pump just a small amount on the back of your hand and rub it in. Once it's absorbed, you'll actually have a pretty good understanding of how that product's going to feel on your hair. So if you get a really lightweight one, you should almost feel nothing. It should maybe just give a little sheen to your skin, and then the heavier, you're gonna feel that it's taking a little bit longer to absorb and it's just thicker overall. And that's a good way to judge. Then let's talk about balms, which are becoming kind of a big deal right now. It's almost like a whipped serum. So when we say balm, you're pretty much taking the page out of cosmetics as far as lip balms or like a skin balm, anything like that. So by definition, they are heavily weighted. They tend to gloss and coat the hair, so it can give more of a shinier look, not quite wet. If you push them too far, you'd absolutely get a wet look, but that's not their design, but they are a little bit more on the sheen side. Are they a good resource? Absolutely. I like balms. I just proceed with caution when using them because they are very dense. So I always suggest that if you're ever curious, it's worth a shot. You can go ahead and play with it. But ultimately, if you're someone who's on the finer side, a balm is probably not gonna be your jam. So that's an idea. Gels. Gels, I like gels and a lot of people don't. And I think one of the reasons why is we get this throwback to LA looks, like ramen noodle hair gel and they're real crunchy. I will say gel has come a long way because we all said the same thing. It's a crunchy look, it's too hard, it's too wet looking, no one likes it, this sucks, and then it breaks and it cracks. So a lot of brands listen to that feedback and have engineered gels now that don't have those same properties. So give them a shot if you haven't used a gel in a while and see maybe if that could be a product for you. They're wonderful for anti-humectants. It's because of how they dry and the way they do dry and coat. They prevent any moisture from penetrating, which is why curls last so long, which is also why some people still use gel. Is even if they don't really like the feel of it, it's still a hell of a lot better than the alternative. So, but play with them. We also now have whipped gels or hybrid gels now, which are almost either a cream based or a co-cream. And that's great because you still get all the kind of hold and protection from a gel, but they're a lot less stiff and they're much more manageable and movable. So again, the technology on them is a lot better. If you haven't visited them in a while, it may be time to give them a look if you're kind of at a stalemate in your styling. Then into mousse. I use mousse on just about anyone that will let me. It's one of my favorite styling products. And I think the reason people don't like it is because they're breaking it down. So mousse is supposed to go into the hair super fluffy and aerated. So you'd put it in your hand and you would cut it in half and then you squish it in. If you emulsify a mousse all the way down until it's all liquid on your hands, you're actually creating a gel. And so a lot of times when someone's like, oh, mousse are sticky. Well, if you break them down all the way, they absolutely will be sticky because now it's not the property they were intended to be. It's also why if you look on Instagram and you see someone that's like making the S pattern with the mousse and just combing through it, that's why they're keeping the product just all nice and foamy. They're not breaking it down until it becomes something it's not, and you'll get a lot more success from it. Always check the directions on a mousse. I know off the top of my hand that like one from Orbea does need to be broken down and the others don't. So it's always good to give a pass at the bottle and make sure that you are applying it towards brand specifications. So that's another one. Also with mousse, I think people don't use enough of it. And as a result, they don't get a lot of success because it's just a lack of product in their hair. I always suggest if you're ever curious on how much product to use and you're not sure, pick a day where you don't have to like go out or do anything. You don't have to like run to errands and play with your product. Push that envelope. Put way more in it than you thought you would need and just see. Because worst case scenario, you shampoo it out and it's no big deal. But that way it'll help you gauge. A lot of times when I get a new product, I do that. Like one of my clients is a little victim and I'm like, is that too much? We'll find out. And it always helps me gauge what is too much and what is not enough. And I usually all the time into a category where it was just enough and that it wasn't more than I actually needed or too much more than I actually needed. So I didn't have to wash them again. But if you don't know what too much is, you'll never know what the right amount is either. So once you start playing with that, you'll be able to figure out exactly how much product to put into your hair. It's different for everybody. So it's not like one of those things I can say everyone's going to just use this amount because that matters on like what type of curl you have and how long your hair is and how thick it is. So just play around with that, but absolutely it's not one standard size. I touched on a little earlier when you have multiple curl patterns in the head. Things that you can do is you can buy a couple different products for that. It's not unusual. You don't have to use the same product on your entire head. Is it ultimately more economical? Absolutely. But if you're not getting the results from it, there's no point. A lot of times that we see around the front, your hair is real sad because there's a lot of tension on it and it's taken the biggest beating. So that sometimes won't curl nearly as well as the back or kind of vice versa depending on your lifestyle. So what you can always do is, let's say we're talking about the first scenario, is put something a little bit heavier on the bottom to bring those curls down a little bit so you don't lose so much length. And then maybe on the top, use something like a mousse and help boost it up and use a curl contractor. You can also then maybe just diffuse just the top and get those suckers going and skip the back. And that way everything kind of dries almost in a circle and it works better. But with that one, it's really just kind of a matter of figuring out what product works for your specific problem and then running with that product. And again, it's not just this cookie cutter, you have to use this or you have to use that, but don't be scared to use two separate products to fight two different issues. It can be really beneficial for you, and ultimately, if you're really happy with the style, then it's usually worth the investment.